Now, welcome back. Experts and high-level discussion makers from the Southern African countries will discuss and explore actionable recommendations for the development and ethical use of use of artificial intelligence at the UNESCO Southern Regional Sub-Regional Forum on Artificial Intelligence, another theme towards sustainable development orientated and ethical use of artificial intelligence. Now, joining us with more details is Dr. Immolatrix Geingos, Deputy Representative, Permanent Representative of Namibia to UNESCO, as well as a chairperson of the UNESCO Intergovernmental Bioethics Committee, to share more light on that. Quite a mouthful.
Yes.
But good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning to you and good morning, Namibia.
Okay, let's talk about, in your professional view, and perhaps maybe also try and break it down in the lamest terms possible. What's the relation between human intelligence and technology?
The very essence of artificial intelligence, or the foundation of what it is at the convergence of human intelligence and technology. In as far as it simulates or imitates human intelligence in order to perform certain tasks or solve some socioeconomic situation. So it's really the convergence where you meet human intelligence with technology that we come up with artificial intelligence.
Okay. While you're at the human intelligence and convergence, let's talk about some of what are the technical guidances that especially that UNESCO offers to developing countries, and are there any fruits that we can see in terms of the investment and the assistance in terms of development when it comes to technology and especially converging this sort of intelligence that we want to move towards?
If one has to consider UNESCO's role within this sphere, we have to look at what is the mandate of UNESCO broadly. UNESCO deals with 5 thematic areas broadly. That is information communications, that is natural sciences, human and social sciences, culture and education. So within those domains, UNESCO advanced several guidance, policy, and also legal framework governance guidance that help member states to set up their own legal and policy frameworks. But within it is also the important function of capacity building, because in as much as you give guidance to member states, it is important that UNESCO assist them in capacitating them to implement and carry out this guidance, because at the end of the day, it's not just having legal or policy frameworks for the sake of having them, but these are enabling frameworks that will allow us to develop, not only to use the technologies, but develop and use them in a responsible and ethically sound manner. So these guidelines of UNESCO really spans across all the sectors of UNESCO in terms of what UNESCO does for its member states. Although we specifically here talks about artificial intelligence this time, which we know that in November last year, UNESCO General Conference adopted a recommendation which is really a normative instrument to guide member states as one of the examples that we can pinpoint to say that this is how UNESCO assists member states. Have we seen fruits? Of course, UNESCO has helped many member states in developing their instruments in the different sectors of its mandate. For example, Namibia, we benefited from our STI review, Science and Technology Innovation Systems Review, from UNESCO's technical assistance, technical and financial assistance few years ago. And also because science is progressively advancing, so we cannot be bogged down with the policies and the systems that we adopted yesteryear.
Yes.
So there is always continuous review.
Yes.
And UNESCO is really taking member states through these kind of processes. And I'm happy to say that Namibia has always been taking full advantage of what UNESCO offers.
That's good to hear. Let's talk about the fact that the conference will be discussing the establishment of the Artificial Intelligence Centers of Excellence. How will these centers, for instance, aid or be beneficial to developing countries? Specifically, maybe let's break it down to the local context. How would Namibia benefit from these centers?
Yes. Actually, it is very preemptive to say that the conference is going to discuss this specific issue, because there is no specific agenda item on the conference agenda that deals with this. But of course, if UNESCO member states want or see the needs for such standards of excellence, which is a very critical on-the-ground capacity building and technical support role, because UNESCO deals with Category 2 and Category 1 centers, which are just specialized centers that deals with the technical aspects within a specific mandate of UNESCO. Now, how will it benefit us as developing countries, us as Namibia? I would just say at this stage that we are at embryonic stage of discussion of how we can pull the excellent initiatives in water management at our University of Science and Technology, which has also hosted some technical chairs of UNESCO within this sector. Now, we realize that they are excellent initiatives, but we have to pull them all together within a framework, and we are in discussion with UNESCO as to how we can make that a Category 2 center of UNESCO, meaning that broad-based expertise in water management
will be attracted to the university, funding opportunities, research, innovation,
Yes, and through that we will train also degrees, not only bachelors, but masters and PhDs. So it has a function of not only generating knowledge that will assist governments in improving the policies, but by doing so, we will also train our students in important issues of water management. You know, Namibia is an arid country. We have floods and droughts. How do we manage floods and droughts? And to link that to artificial intelligence, there are many technologies in this sphere that could be used for this kind of purposes. So what kind of center of excellence, we don't know. It needs to be discussed. But the current discussions on the table demonstrates how centers of excellence could be benefit to our countries, but also employ technologies such as artificial intelligence to manage these technologies, but also maybe, depending on how we frame the mandate of the center, how we can train our students so that we don't only become users of technologies, but we also innovate and develop our own context-specific technologies to address our own context-specific innovative solutions. So that's how we can, at this stage, talk about a possible center of excellence, but it needs to be member states driven. It needs to be what member states want, and if that recommendation comes up at the end of the conference, I'm sure it's something that UNESCO can help member states with.
Okay, let's talk about the fact, what are some of the common approaches that can be developed, especially in terms of regional caucus, be it Southern or be it Africa, especially when it comes to issues related to ethical challenges and human rights issues?
Issues of ethics and human rights borders on the specific values which is derived from the cultural and traditional practices of a specific country. Having said that, it is clear that these are diverse issues all over the globe. So to speak about common approaches, it's a bit evasive because it's not possible. We perceive and value things differently. That's why also at international level, it's very cumbersome and difficult to come up with commonly agreed principles because of this. But we are navigating through these difficulties. That's why we have the ethics recommendation on the table. What the recommendation is doing, it's a normative instrument. It just guides. It advances principles that are commonly agreed across the globe. But how and to what extent individual member states implement these principles depends on the unique socio-economic cultural context, as I said, because they are based on the specific values. So that's also the same approach that we foresee at the regional level. So I'm a bit apprehensive to talk about a common approach, but what I can say is that there are commonalities in the approaches which are advanced by the common principles that we have adopted through the recommendation, which are principles that are universally accepted as guiding norms rather than a common approach which is somehow
a bit far-fetched for now. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I just wanted to ask you, perhaps maybe this will cover the area while we conclude. It's the issue of the technology continues to advance, and the fear is that Africa gets so left behind. So what is it? What's being done, or what is what is being said right now? Ideally, that position that we want to be, whereby we don't want robots to entirely replace, obviously, human job security and all those things. What is being done to ensure that we actually remain at one par?
That's $1 million question, because that's the question we need to answer as a nation, as a government, before we can promote any kind of technologies, because the main aim is to improve our socio-economic condition rather than demolish that through the possibility of as you mentioned, losing jobs. But I have a different approach to this question, because it's one of those situations whether you see the glass half full or half empty. I would have phrased, what is the opportunity in terms of our labor force that we foresee in these advancements of these technologies? Because in as much as some jobs will be replaced, the technologies comes with new opportunities. So how do we skill our labor force? How do we train? What kind of training, skills development do we already start now, so that we can take full advantage of the technology while we are going to lose some of the job categories that traditionally employed our people? So I want to answer this by saying, in as much as there are challenges, there are opportunities. How do we position ourselves as a country? How do we prepare our job force to skill them to actually be able to be absorbed by those opportunities that the technology is inherently creating in terms of new job categories while replacing the old? So it's not that dull or doom. I think there is a lot of options and possibilities if we just position ourselves right and take advantage of how we can advance the technology.
So Namibia must embrace itself for change while also trying to seek for the opportunities that it brings.
Yes, change is inevitable. We are already faced with the technologies. We have to live with it. How best do we position ourselves as a nation, as a country, as individuals to take advantage of it?
Do you think that the Fourth Industrial Revolution report that was recently compiled and finalized perhaps will also give us an opportunity to see how we can best respond to these new advances?
Of course, the work and the reports and all the deliberations that was done by the task force is excellent, because it is within the broad framework of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which is anchored by AI, because AI is the thing of the future. AI is what drives the economic imperatives of today and of tomorrow. So that work sets the global picture in terms of where we are and how we see ourselves advancing. Now, what the UNESCO workshop or the conference on AI is doing is to unpack specifically from the broad framework of the Fourth Industrial Revolution the importance of AI, and by doing so also advance the debates and the conversations on how we are going to position ourselves as a nation and as a country. So these things are really, it's dovetailing, it's setting and continuing with the momentum. And the next could perhaps be that while this is a regional workshop, we as a nation, as Namibia, discuss the AI imperatives within our national context. So that's probably where we should drive the next conversation.
Unfortunately, Doctor, running out of time. It's quite interesting discussion. We hope we have more time. We're going to get you back in studio after your discussion at this sub-regional level forum.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Now, that was Dr. Immolatrix Geingos, the Deputy Permanent Representative of Namibia to UNESCO and Chairperson of the UNESCO Intergovernmental Bioethics Committee, talking to us about the UNESCO Southern African Regional Forum on Artificial Intelligence under the theme towards sustainable development oriented and ethical use of artificial intelligence that will be taking place between the 7th to the 8th in Windhoek. Now do stay tuned. Gudambia gets to return shortly after this break.